it's a shame that we're sitting here now in the 21st century talking about a Black History Month. You know, if we have to have a Black History Month every year to show people, you know, about equality and about diversity and about education, you know, then we are still a long, long way to go. You know, we've been, Black people have done a lot for this country and a lot for the world, and not being recognised because we've always kind of felt that we are the minority, okay? And that's something that we're still trying to kind of climb over obstacles about. You know, we feel that way. And I think by doing it, yes, it gives us recognition for what we've achieved. And it was funny you mentioned that, because last night I was watching a film called Respect. It's about Aretha Franklin, and it was about her biography and Jennifer Hudson was playing it, and it showed, you know, all the kind of history with Martin Luther King and how she was an activist for Black rights movements and all that, and it was amazing to see what these people have gone through back in the days, just so the people like me, you know, can sit here and talk to you and I have a life and play football, enjoy my life. These people have gone through so much. Going back to Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson, you can go back as far as you want. And I feel we've still got a long way to go. I feel that, you know, we talk about racism, and racism is for me, is not just about Black people. You know, racism can be in all kinds of forms, or religions, or creeds, or colours. It can be anything, you know. But it's about education. It's about learning, you know, the young kids now, you know, and that's what I like about the schools now and the youth zones, because there's all different colours and creeds and diversities, and they don't look at colour, they just look at you as a person. And I've been in football, and you know, where people look at you as a colour, you know, and that's always been a problem. And there's still this problem now. We talk about Black managers, you know, there's probably one or two in the football league. That's embarrassing. You know, we're at the moment where we've got 25% of Black players now playing in the football league. 5 years ago, there was probably 12%. You know, so we're getting that degree. But I think where we are in society, it's about education and teaching our younger generation about racism, you know, about seeing someone for who they are, not for what colour their skin is. And I think the more we keep pushing it out there, you know, not just once a month, you know, I think we need to push it out even more. You know, I mean, the players in the Premier League are they're using their platforms, the likes of Rashford and Sterling. You know, we're kneeling before games. You know, it's a show against discrimination. But more needs to be done. And I just think sometimes we have a Black History Month, and it's great for 4 weeks, and then we go on to something else. I want a continuation of this every month, until we start to try to eradicate. You're never going to eradicate racism solely, you know, it's a social, it's a cultural thing, but you can learn, and you can filter it down and water it down. And the only way we're going to do that, if we keep pushing that button and saying we're not prepared to put up with this discrimination, we're not prepared to put up with this, you know, unequal situation where people get jobs because they're white and not because they're Black, and you know that can't be right. You know, it's a world of equal. What's the word I'm talking about? Equal qualities, basically. We talk about football now. You know, we've now got women involved in our men's football. We've got women commentating on men's football. Wouldn't have even perceived that would have happened 4 or 5 years ago. You know, so we are trying to change. You know, everyone's trying to change, but we've still got a long, long way to go. They don't really kind of see that kind of side of it, because I'm Black and my wife's white. They don't see it as an issue. They just, you know, but I think my daughter, Ria, I think she kind of appreciates it more than my 2 boys. You know, I think boys are kind of flippant with it, and they think, okay, Black History Month, but Ria's more into it, you know, and what it means. And, you know, I just say, listen, darling, you know, as much as you're here now, it's important to remember the people in Black History Month, you know, who got you where you are today. And, you know, and go back and look at, you know, the 60s, you know, the 50s, when, all the anarchy was going on, the apartheid, and you know, black people get beat and killed and hung and all that type of stuff. You know, look back in history, you know, and a realization how fortunate we are to be born in this time, to be present at this time. And that's all you can say. You know, I don't try to make it too deep, but I have more better conversations about this with my daughter than I do with my two sons, to be fair. But listen, they realise that. I mean, you can't get away from it. You know, as I said, the good thing about TV, radio, it's on there. It's in your face every time, you know, for the last month. Adverts, it's on your face all the time. Adverts now, I've seen more adverts with black people than I've seen in my whole life. Because it's important, it's important. So we can't get away from it, we just got to keep pushing forward with it. Oh, well, I'll tell you a story. I made my debut for West Ham away, and we were getting beat 4-0. And then John Lowell said, Paul, warm up. There's about 20 minutes to go. So I warmed up down the side outside of the fans, the opposing fans. And all of a sudden, you know, the monkey chants, the bananas come on the pitch, the coins. And I'm, you know, and I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe it. But the only thing that could still be in good stead for that, because I'd spent 6-7 years prior to that standing on Bennett's Castle Lane, you know, where I've had cars come past, white lads come past in cars and calls us the discrimination names and, you know, that type of stuff. So it was like I was hardened to that, even though it's my first game. I didn't expect it to be actually on the terraces. I think that was more of a culture shock for me. But I think I was mentally tough enough, even at 18, with what I'd kind of been through in life, that I was mentally tough enough to say, it doesn't matter, you know, whatever they throw at me, you know, my aim and hasn't changed. And, you know, even after that game and then, you know, going back into the change room, you know, and talking to people like Bobby Barnes and I was like, is this how it is? He said, yeah, Paul, this is part of our culture. This is the culture we're in. You know, it's okay. It seems okay to say racial stuff, you know, against black players. It's the way it is. But, you know, unfortunately, you have to deal with it. If you don't, sink or swim, you know, and it's one of them. If you're not mentally tough enough to deal with it, then you're going to sink, you know, and that's something that I had a conversation with Sil Regis about, Brendan Batson, you know, what was it like in their times, and it was 10 times as worse, you know. So by them saying that, I felt I got it easy, to be fair. And this is the thing, because we talk about the players now, you know, with Instagram and social media. I mean, you should never have to write on social media something about a black player because he's made a mistake or done something wrong. But in a kind of perverse kind of way, they're kind of fortunate in the fact that it wasn't back in the 70s, back in the 80s, where they were throwing bananas at you and calling you this and calling you that, you know. So we're like forebearers for what they're doing now. But no, I realised that was how it was in football in the 80s. I realised that nothing was going to stand in my way. And I just kind of mentally just dealt with it. And I always kind of felt if they was shouting stuff at me, it means they were trying to put me off. And the reason why they were trying to put me off was because I was a good player. And that's what it was. And to be fair, that was their excuse. That was the excuse to say, well, the reason why they shout racist abuse at you was to try and put you off your game. And I think, what type of excuse is that? You know, what type of excuse is that? If that's how it was, then I could deal with it. But it's not a reason, you know, to shout abuse at someone to put them off their game. But as it got into the 80s, you know, you kind of get accustomed to it, you kind of get used to it, you know. And even going back to 1995 when I went to Ince Milan, over there was just as racist. It was no different. And it was like, it's okay to be racist. It's part of our game. This is what the fans do. You know, the governing bodies are not prepared to do anything because it's part of our culture. And this is something we're trying to do now, is change our culture. No, you can listen, you can sit in hindsight and say yes, but, you know, I kind of felt the more black players who were getting into the game, because, and I just quickly rewind a bit, because when I went to Inter Milan, and the racism was rife. And there wasn't a lot of black players playing in Serie A at the moment. There was me, George Weah, a few others. And we all kind of had a meeting, and we was talking about, you know, there seem to be more black players now coming into the Italian Football League, and we can't put up with this racism stuff all the time. They think it's okay to do this, and we're not prepared to put up with it. You know, so we met someone from the Italian FA and said, listen, this needs to stop. You know, there's a lot of French Guyan players coming in here, a lot of black players, and you need to do something about it. Never did anything about it, which didn't surprise me. But then going back to West Ham, I kind of felt at the time, at the moment, you just accept this is it. You know, this is it. You know, I think it'd have been hard for someone who had probably a decent upbringing, where it didn't have to kind of experience all these racial chants standing on the street corner, then to go onto a pitch, not having experienced what I experienced, and then having that thrown at him or her. That would be, I'm not sure you could deal with that. But for me, I was hardened to it because I've been brought up on that type of stuff. Did I think it would change at the time? No. As the years went on, then it looked like it was starting to change. Once people started to wake up, you know, a lot of people have their eyes shut to this type of stuff and pretend they're asleep, you know, and we have to wake these people up. And I think even now, you know, there's still a lot of people with their eyes shut, you know, making out they're asleep, and we have to keep waking these people up. And we're doing that, you know, everyone's doing it. The press are trying to do it, the papers, the TV, the PFA, LMA, Premier League, the footballers now have a massive platform. And it can't be just the black footballers, you know, because I think when we talk about Black History Month, just what Lizzie was saying prior to that, everyone talks about black people talk about black people. You know, there's no, you don't see many white people on there talking about black people. We need to stop it, we need to do this. It's always black people saying their point. You know, we've seen it with the basketball players. You know, it's all black people talking about black people. I need to see more white people talking about racism and how we need to stop it, how it's not. Leaders, characters, people who are role models to people. You know, I need to see more of that. But we're all trying to make an effort to try and stamp this out. We can only do a certain thing. We can't change the way social and cultural environmental people think about black people or whoever they may be. But as footballers, we have a platform where we can make a difference. And that's the most important thing, that we keep pursuing that and keep doing that. And the likes of myself and Rashford and Sterling, all the ones who are role models to a lot of kids, not just black kids, but white kids too. You know, got to keep putting it out. And as I said to Lizzie, we've got to keep putting it out. And we are getting better. You know, 2-3 years ago, you know, racism on the terrorists was more or less gone. Now, so the next 2-3 years, it's starting to rear its ugly head again. And that says to me, we've got a long way to go. I just thought, great, you know, I'm going to be England captain. What an honour, unbelievable. Who would have thought? You know, and it made me think back to my journey, where it all started, you know, on Becontree Avenue or Parslow's Park, or it did, because I thought, wow, I've come such a long way. You know, I've gone from like standing on the street corner, fighting, kicking and drinking and doing all that stuff, you know, to now, you know, playing for the biggest clubs in the world, England captain, never went to school, but now I can speak another language. And all these things come flowing back to you. So the journey that I've made to get where I am, you know, for me personally, it's fantastic. So when I just kind of went into the press conference and they said, "Oh, Paul, what's it like to be the first black England captain?" I never looked at it that way. I just looked at it as, what's it like just to be the captain of England? Why does the colour have to come into it? You know, if Alan Shearer was the same, they wouldn't say, Alan Shearer, what's it like to be the first white England captain, would they? So they saw colour, and I said, well, to be fair, I don't see it as that. I was proud that I was a black England captain, don't get me wrong, but it was just the fact I was England captain. So that was kind of strange feeling for me. And I never realised how much it inspired other people. And it was only after the Italy-Rome game, and I got back home, and I must have had seriously about 2,000 letters honestly, big bags, all right? I read all of them. And probably 60% of them were from non-related people, from parents, from doctors, from MPs, from just normal mothers, single parent fathers, all that type of stuff. Just saying, you know, how you've inspired our children, how you inspired me, you know, how we, you know, have read your journey, seen your journey, read your story, you know, and I've read it to my children, you know, or my child, or just letters like that. And that's, for me, was something I never realised, what I'd inspired other people so much. You don't realise that. And, you know, you kind of think, if I can inspire people, that's all I want out of life, you know what I mean? It's not about myself. And to know that I've inspired, I'm talking around the world, I'm talking Nigeria, I'm talking Kenya, I'm talking China, you name a country, I had letters from these people saying what an inspiration I was. And, you know, that's the thing when people say to me, you know, when I finish my career, what's the highlight? And they say, the highlight for me is that I've inspired so many people to try and feel that, you know, you can get out of where you want to get to, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice. But if you've got the desire, you know, you can do it. And here's the reason why, and this is the story where I am now, that you can do that. And that was the greatest thing for me that came out of that, you know, not just being captain of England, but the effect it had on so many kids. We've now got 25%, maybe 30% now black people playing in the Football League. And when they finish their careers, we need to make sure there's an avenue for them to go right, because the football's a short career. You know, it's 15 years, 16 years max. You know, so we need to make sure that when these young black players or people come to the end of their career, feel like they've got an avenue to go into coaching, to go into management. You know, but I don't want it to be a token gesture because they're black. We're going to give you an avenue because you're black. No, I also state that if you want to be a manager or a coach, you have to do your qualifications. You have to do your badges. You know, like I had to do. Because if you haven't, they'll always use it against you. They'll always have, I don't want none of these people, none of these chairmen or CEOs or whoever it may be, to have an excuse not to employ a black person because he's black. Some excuses will be because he's black, but sometimes they use an excuse that he hasn't got the qualifications when the real excuse is because he's black. So it's one of those. I managed for 7 years, and I managed in every league, Premier League, every league, and I had to put up stones. I had to do miracle jobs to get a job in the Premier League at Blackburn. You know, you're right what you say, Greg. When things go wrong, they're so quickly to fire you. You know, but we see that all the time, and it's like it feels like every time a black manager does wrong, the rest of the people, football fraternity, think, oh, well, black managers are no good. There's a stigma that if someone has a bad time, oh, black managers are no good, whether it's me, whether it's Chrissy Houghton or it's Chris Powell. I mean, someone like John Barnes, he's got a vast knowledge of football. You know, he went to Celtic with Kenny Dalglish. You know, comes back, can't get a job. And he knows more about football than most other people. I just think it's an education where, you know, you talked about the EFL, you have to interview a black manager every time a job comes up. There's only certain clubs who are doing that. It's not every club, you know, and the thing is, even then, are they doing that? I don't think they do, because what we need to get to is a situation where what clubs are doing now is, okay, we'll interview Paul Ince because that's what the criteria says, but we've already got our man anyway, because we spoke to him before the manager got sacked. So, but we're just trying to tick a box here, you know, and that's something it needs to change. We talked about, you know, the Rooney Rule 2 years ago, it came up, and, you know, what they do in America, in the NFL and the NBA. That's the model we need to look at. We spoke about it for a week, the Rooney Rule. Haven't spoken about it since then. Now, the NFL and the NBA state that you have to have a black coach or black manager in your side, in your staff. That's how it works. And we see so many black NBA managers and same in NFL, because they've got the moral right, and because people now believe they've got a chance to go into that next line of work. My son's 30 years of age and he plays at Stoke. And I'm thinking to myself, in 4 or 5 years' time, I'm hoping things will change where you can go into a coaching role and you can go into a manager's role, and people are not going to judge you on your colour, because when you are black and you're in a manager's role, you get less time than if you was white in a manager's role. And that can't be right. Maybe because they feel we're in a minority. Maybe, as I said to Lizzie, it's education, it's understanding that, you know, doesn't matter what colour skin you are, you're there to do a job. And if you can do that job, you should give them that job. But don't not give them that job because they're the wrong colour. That can't work right. So we're still learning on that. But ultimately, Greg, the owner's the owner. He decides what manager he wants. As much as we try to say, well, listen, we keep opening the door, we keep pushing the door forward, and, you know, we want black players and black people to get chances and black women to get chances in management. Ultimately, it's the owner who make that decision. You know, and I think the less black managers and black we see in the game and black coaches, the more the footballers who will be finishing their career will go on to do something else. And then we'll be losing more, maybe top managers out of the game. I think we've got a long, long way to go. I think something has to change drastically. I'm not saying put people into roles because they're black. It's down to the black people to make sure that they're ready to do it and they're prepared to do it. But all we're asking is for a chance and an opportunity to show what we can do. Some black managers can't even get into the interview room where they can sit down and talk and put their points across. You know, that should go across all the board, because eventually, if you do that, then you will get a job and you will be successful, and then that starts the domino effect with the people who are coming out of the game. It's going to be a long way into a black manager comes in and wins maybe the Premier League or an English black manager. But as we sit here now, there's probably only 6 or 7 of us, you know, and I don't see anybody else coming from behind, you know. And why would these footballers now who get paid vast amount of money, you know, when they finish their career, why would they think, well, let me go into management? Well, I'm not going to get a chance. I'm not going to get the time. I don't need to do it. You know, you see the stress that it brings on people. And I don't feel comfortable about doing it. I'd rather go and do something else. And that's why you see a lot of players go into punditry, you know, that type of stuff. So unless we get to the stage where these ex-players or players who come to their career and behind them feel that there's an avenue that they're going to get a chance and they're going to show what they can do, then we're going to be stagnating for a long, long time.